Okay, everyone, how are you doing? Only 2 more weeks left of art. Now, I really want to say a big thank you to everyone who sent in photographs last week. I really, really loved looking at them. And also to people who chose some of their favorite, sorry, I have the hiccups, their favorite macro photography images and sent them in to me and explained why they really liked those pictures. That was really fun for me to look at as well. Lots of images I hadn't seen before, so really cool. So this week I thought that we would do the next most popular type of art that people were interested in learning about, which was making more realistic drawings. So I thought I would teach you about two things that I really felt helped to make my drawings get to the next level. Now, I learned these when I was actually in high school in grade 9, so I'm giving you a little bit of an edge, but I think that you guys can handle it for sure. But it means that it's been quite a while since I've practiced them, and so my drawing skills are a little bit rusty. And just like everything, drawing and art is a skill, and the more you practice it, and the more often you do it, the better you'll get at it. People often think that drawing is something that you're either born able to do or you're not, but that's not true. Anyone can learn how to draw if they're really interested in it and they really want to do it. So because I haven't been using this skill for very long, my skill is rusty. It's like, if you're playing the piano or skiing or any of those things, if you haven't done them for a long time, you're not going to be as good at them, but I'm still going to give it my best shot. So the two things that I wanted to talk to you about were shading and shadowing, which I'm going to kind of put together, which really help to try to bring things to life and make them seem three-dimensional. And then the other thing is one-point perspective. So there's a couple of different ways that you can draw perspective, but we're just going to focus on one-point perspective today. And this is a way to give depth to your picture. We know that when we look at things, the farther away they are, the smaller they are. And so one-point perspective is a way to help us do that when we are drawing. So I'm going to focus on just drawing really simple shapes this week just to practice these skills, shading, shadowing, and one-point perspective with simple objects. So I'm going to draw a cube and I'm going to draw a circle. And I'd love for you guys to either pick one or both to draw. If you want, you can embellish them a little bit. So maybe instead of just doing a cube, you could do a house, or instead of doing a circle, you could do a apple or something else that's circular, or a cherry or something like that, a basketball. But I really want whatever you decide to focus on. If you're doing something that's cube-like, I want you to use one-point perspective to draw it, and for whatever you draw, really try and use shading and shadowing. And if this is something that's new to you entirely, I would really suggest just drawing simple shapes just to practice the skill. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to use one-point perspective to draw a cube. So the things that you're going to need today are you're going to need some Q-tips. You don't absolutely have to have these, but they really help. You're going to need a pencil. You're going to need maybe a pencil sharpener, depending on your pencil, and you're going to for sure need an eraser. Okay, so if you don't have those things, and paper, obviously, you're going to need paper. So if you don't have those things, you might want to go grab them now, or you can watch the video and then go get them. So to do my cube, the first thing I'm going to do is on my piece of paper, I'm going to draw the front of my cube, which is just going to be a square. And I want to make sure I'm using my ruler and that my lines are nice and sharp and the front of my cube. Now here is where one-point perspective comes in. So in order to make it look like my cube is getting smaller, and mine's actually going to be a rectangular prism, but the smaller, the farther away it is, I'm going to pick a perspective point. So I'm going to pick one way up here, and you should try and pick one also that's far away from the cube you're drawing. And then I'm going to do the lines for the bottom and the sides are going to all head towards that one dot, okay? So you end up with this like weird looking kind of 3D shape that looks like it's going over here and disappearing into nowhere. But that's just temporary. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the top and the back side of my cube. It's really important that you keep these lines parallel, okay? So anytime I'm drawing another edge that's kind of in line with these ones, I want to make sure they're parallel, okay? So I'm going to draw those, and I'm just going to decide how long I want my rectangular prism or my cube to be. I'm going to draw them. That, making sure they're parallel. Didn't do a very good job of making that one parallel, so I'm going to redraw it. Great. And now I can just erase these guidelines. Okay. So there is my rectangular prism, my cube, drawn in 3-point perspective, or 1-point perspective, sorry, because it gets a little bit smaller as it goes off into the distance. So now what I need to do is I'm going to do some shading and shadowing on this to really make it seem three-dimensional. So we can imagine that I have this box here, and we have to try and decide where we think the light is coming from for our rectangular prism to be coming from the top front. So in that case, the side is going to be the darkest, the top is going to be a little bit lighter, and the front is going to be the lightest side of my cube. So I'm just going to take my pencil and I'm going to evenly shade my cube in that way so that the front is the lightest. I still like to give it a little bit of pencil on the front. This is going to be kind of like medium dark, and this is going to be quite dark along that side. So we're trying to keep the sides as sort of even as possible, but now is where our little Q-tips come in, and we can use these for a bit of a trick. And you can actually get something that's called a smudge stick, which is actually what this is meant for, and they have like a more precise tip, but the Q-tip works in a pinch. So I'm just going to use this and go over the sides to make it more even on each side. Okay, so there we have my cube, my rectangular prism that has its shading and shadowing done, and it's 1-point perspective, so it makes it look like it's coming off the page. And now I'm going to use my pencil and my Q-tip to also put a shadow on here. Now, because we know the light is coming from kind of up front and over here, the shadow is going to be coming off of this side of my cube. And shadows are normally strongest closest to the object, and then they get a little bit weaker as they move away from the object. Okay, so think about that when you're putting your shadow on there, and also think about the angle of the ground as well while you're doing it. So I'm just going to put a little bit of a shadow on my cube. So there we have it. A 3D realistic looking rectangular prism. So the other shape, as I said, I wanted to show you how to do is a sphere. So I'm going to cheat and I'm going to use something circular. So I've got this. I'm going to take my pencils out of it. And I'm just going to use it to trace a sphere or circle onto, well, it's going to be a circle, and my shading and shadowing are what's going to make it appear to be a sphere. So I've got my circle here, but really all it is right now is a circle. So I need to do shading and shadowing to make it come to life. So very similar to, because it's in the same image, I want to pretend that the light's coming from the same place as it did for this rectangular prism. So it should be coming from sort of like out front and on this side. So the shiniest part, or the part that's in the most light of my sphere, is going to kind of be up in this area. And the darkest side of my sphere is going to be down there. The tricky thing about a sphere, though, is that unlike a cube, there's no sides. So we kind of have to use a gradient. It's going from dark to light to show how the light would hit this object. So I'm going to just color that in so you can see that I'm going to have the darkest part down here and kind of the light spot up there. Okay, so I've got some shading done now, and I'm going to put a shadow on my sphere. So I want it to be coming out the same way as I have it on my rectangular. Okay, there we have it. A rectangular prism and a sphere using 1-point perspective and shading and shadowing to make them pop. So as I mentioned, if this is something that you've done a lot of before, or you feel really confident in your ability to use pencil and paper to do some shading and shadowing, then feel free to create a little bit more of a complicated object. Maybe you want to add some texture to, maybe you want to do like a brick, or like an object made of brick, or like I said, a house. Maybe you want to make this into a ball, like a basketball, a cherry, an apple, whatever you want. Another option, which is something that's pretty fun, is to use dark construction paper. Now for this, you won't probably be able to use the Q-tips in the same way to smudge, but it can be pretty fun to use a dark construction paper and a light colored pencil crayon. So I'll just give you, I'll show you what that can look like. So here are my sort of like, they almost end up looking like x-rays, which is kind of cool. Shading and shadowing using a white, in my case, pencil crayon on dark construction paper. So just something that you might want to play around with if you're interested in doing this. So for this week, your assignment is simple, just to play around with geometric shapes, shading and shadowing. You can use and 1-point perspective, if especially if you're using a cube or a rectangular prism, that's what it's called, like I did, but you don't have to. And I would love for you to take pictures and share them with me if you can. I know that not everybody has that capability, and that is okay. This is just a fun activity to try our hand at some drawing, because we haven't really necessarily been doing too much of it recently, and I thought it would be a fun thing to do, and something that when you draw anything from now on, whether it be a person or a flower, really try and think about where is the light coming from for that object, where the shadow is going to be, and how you can use perspective to make it look more realistic. Okay, can't wait to see what you guys create, and looking forward to our final week of art next week. So if you have any ideas about what you'd like to do, please make sure you share those with me. Otherwise, I'll think up something fun for our last week, okay? All right, bye.